So my wife seems to be bored, or she's telling me that she's bored. She's telling me that life has not changed. I'm not growing, that she's unhappy. And I've been reading on the internets on www.google.com. There's this website called Google that sometimes women are into assholes. Sometimes women are into bad boys. And so is it true that asshole behaviors can lead to more desire and attraction? How does that work? We're going to get into that today here on the C Note Show with myself, Jeff Allen, and Miss Cynthia Cruz. And there's two big factors that I'll talk about in this context by the end of this call today. So welcome to the C Note Show with me and Cynthia. We teach how to love and lead with mojo like a king in your marriage. She wants more safety, inspiration, and sexual leadership from you, from your masculine leadership. And you also want to avoid big problems and how to solve issues that have already come up. That's what Cynthia and I talk here about on the C Note Show, long-term monogamous relationship between a man and a woman, and how to have deep sexual, intimate connection and a fantastic life together. So do asshole behaviors lead to more desire and attraction with a woman? Is this true? I want to bounce over to Cynthia right away. So, well, first of all, what do you see in your work, in your professional work, in your women's groups, in your, let's say, advanced sexual groups with women as well, learning about tantra and deep intimacy and connection? What do asshole behaviors mean to you? By the way, Cynthia never sees these slides. She knows the topic, but she never sees any of the slides that I prepare. So this is all a surprise to her, really. So what do asshole behaviors mean to you? And what's your opinion on, can they increase desire?
Yeah, I kind of see this as there's different levels of this kind of energy. And I think that's how I can feel through the weeds of it must be really painful to be honorable and noble in this life as a man, and then to see in popular culture that, oh, the asshole gets the woman, or even what, like my wife is attracted to someone with more asshole behavior. And again, there's like a level 1 version of that, and then a level 3 version. I see the term assholes really referring to a man at that level who is not affected or swayed by popular opinion. And so often other people might label that as being an asshole because he's not playing the game, he's being the king. And I think deep down, the feminine is drawn to different levels of that because she wants to feel the deeper king part of that, the one who will not be swayed by others and others' opinions. And that's really important to her attractive brain, her limbic brain, how she feels safe, and the warrior she wants to get behind in life.
Yeah, that's very well said. Excellent. So as we go forward, gentlemen, I want you to think of scenarios and punch them into the chat, or maybe be ready with questions around what have you seen in your own personal life around trying to be nice, right? Trying to be the nice guy and smooth things over and sacrifice for her and for the relationship. And what have you seen that do for her physical attraction, her desire for you? And when have you tried to worry about yourself or take action based off of your own direction, your own path? And what has that done with desire in relationship? And what questions might you have about this topic as we go along? So punch into the chat or be ready to jump in. Raise your hand in Zoom, and we'd love to talk with you about this. Okay, let's take a step forward. There's a book I've had for quite a while. It's by Athol K. Athol is spelled Athol, Athol K, entitled Married Man Sex Life Primer. Athol says, of course, in modern society, much of what makes a good male warrior makes for a terrible citizen, employee, and husband. While physical health remains a good thing, hair-trigger violence and coercion by intimidation quickly gets a man in trouble nowadays. Jails are full of men who would have been good choices for husbands in an ancient tribal culture. In fact, the sexual attraction of women for jailed men is well known, and famously violent offenders get a good deal of fan mail, female fan mail. Likewise, the skills that make someone a good warrior or hunter don't apply terribly well to most white-collar occupations. It matches up pretty well to something like being a firefighter, but much less so to being a computer programmer, accountant, teacher, supermarket manager, or pizza delivery guy. Warriors suck at working in cubicles. The entire social hierarchy has vastly changed, and in many ways has rendered the old traits that attract women obsolete. Now we come to the essential disconnect between what a woman is hardwired to be sexually attracted to and what she needs to create comfort in a modern relationship. I call these two differing skill sets alpha traits and beta traits. Now, gentlemen, if you look on the internet, right, alpha and beta mean different things, but Athol K here, the author here, is not saying that they're good or bad, they're just different. The alpha traits are those that worked in the time before writing. So in ancient times, the alpha traits are those that worked. The old physical and social dominance abilities based on the warrior and hunter skill sets. The alpha male traits are devoted to physicality, assertiveness, leadership, social dominance, healthy genes, raw sexual energy, power, and at times even violence. The positive version is that of an aspiring protector, and the not so positive version is simply a thug. These are the male traits that women are biologically hardwired to respond to with wet panties. The thugs still get panties wet just as the high school quarterback does, but they are scary to be in relationship with. The alpha traits do seem to very much align with the dopamine response in women. So this is really important. It's one of the highlights of, honestly, this book, is that alpha traits seem to very much align with dopamine response in women. Alpha males are exciting, fun, intense, and engaging. Not only do they spark a woman's sexual interest, they spark her romantic interest as well. So here's a paragraph from an excerpt from Tufts University. It's in Massachusetts. This is their School of Psychology. And so when I searched basically anxiety and sexual arousal, I've got a quick excerpt here to support what I was talking about from Athol K's book. This study goes on to say affect, so her affect, how she presents herself, her mood on the outside, her affect influences sexual arousal responses. As one would expect, studies have found that when people are primed to be in a good mood, they experience higher subjective and physiological sexual arousal. So another reason that you don't want to be bringing up wet blanket topics too often. You don't want to be complaining. You don't want to be bringing up the taxes or pressures in relationship much, much more than you do things that are exciting and fun. And also it depends on our baseline good mood in relationship. So how much do we laugh? How much do we see each other in a positive light? Those all give higher subjective and physiological sexual arousal. This goes on to say, studies on negative affect have been more mixed. However, these findings have important real-world consequences, such as informing treatment for individuals with sexual dysfunction. For example, while it was assumed that negative affect played a central role in sexual dysfunction, new research evidences that perhaps it is the absence of positive affect that produces dysfunction. So it's not just that there's bad things going on or hard things going on. It's the absence of positive things that leads to dysfunction, sexual dysfunction. This would explain why diminished sexual response is common in depression, a condition characterized by low positive affect, than in anxiety. So anxiety is a condition of high negative arousal. It's high arousal, physiological arousal. In fact, so the highlighted sentence here is basically what I searched in Google, and it brought me to this study. In fact, anxiety has been shown to facilitate sexual arousal. Presumably, because of the state of high physical arousal, it exacerbates sexual arousal. Okay. So again, the point there is you want to have positive experiences going on, and anxiety around positive experiences can lead to more sexual arousal. So in sort of good anxiety, good things are happening, and anxiety, physiological anxiety is happening, can lead to more physiological arousal. All right. One more excerpt from the book, and then I'll bounce back to you guys and to Cynthia. I wanted to lay this out first. Okay. Final screen here. So there's alpha traits that have to do with, of course, strength, as we know, that can lead to more anxiety, that can lead to more excitement and arousal. And the other is what he calls beta male traits. And again, those aren't bad in his frame. It's just different. So beta male traits are those needed for a modern relationship. These traits are devoted to things that are good for raising children in the modern age, like having a work ethic, building the nest, kindness, parenting skills, listening, holding a job, controlling your anger and sexual energy, being artistic, verbal skills, and creativity, for example. The positive version of beta traits is the man who provides for and supports his family. The negative version of beta is the man who gives away all relationship power to the woman and turns himself into her pussy-whipped servant, he says. The beta male traits build relationship comfort, and this seems to very much align with the pair bonding hormones oxytocin in women and vasopressin in men. So beta builds comfort, which leads to oxytocin, where alpha builds excitement and leads to dopamine. It's all about comfort building for the beta traits, and interpersonal warmth. It's a critical point to understand that beta activities will make a woman like you around, but not fall in love with you. So we're going to go over to the chat here. I definitely want to hear from you guys about what you've seen around excitement versus comfort, or attraction versus comfort. But I want to ask Cynthia first. So overall, talk with us about, how does this ring true, or does this ring true to you in your professional work and in your women's groups and things like this? Where do women, for instance, are they even aware of what we're talking about here today, would you say?
Well, I really like what it said, that it really depends on the woman's I'm sorry, I'm forgetting what EQ stands for. Emotional intelligence. What is it?
Emotional quotient.
Emotional quotient. Okay, I don't know if I've even heard of that. And her self-esteem and attachment style, because there's women out there who are really practiced with understanding that they seek and desire a relationship. They very much value the comfort feeling. No, they don't want to be on the edge of losing, an edge of risk all the time, but they also recognize that there is edge and there is risk. So a lot of women in tantra groups are there to practice because they want to practice some edginess in sexuality, to keep that kind of dopamine there. However, to me, I just feel all this like ache in my body of women not understanding this dynamic and really not honoring and appreciating that you as a man are both of these energies. You are both the wrap around her, make her feel safe, let her know that her whole nervous system doesn't have to be in high alert all the time. And yet there's also this incredible masculine edge to you that's always there, even if our world tries to dampen that. And for her to not see both of those crushes me a little, especially the way a lot of women online can portray that, well, they only want the edge because it's exciting. And that's not true, because eventually her whole nervous system, even though she's attracted to it, will burn out on that. It's a bothness of the energy there. And I would hope that she could provide a bit of bothness in herself, in terms of comfort she provides and excitement and allure and beauty.
Certainly. Well, one thing I appreciate about you and other women that are doing their own self-work is they may be much more aware of these things. They may have a balance in their personal work and such. But let's, if I may, move to, and I want to read the chat here in a second, move to just more the instinctual level. Like, she may not have even any idea that these things are going on. So as Cynthia and I teach in our coaching and in our membership group, the Kingly Life Path is the name of our membership group. There's masculine frame, our own masculine frame as a man, our ability to provide emotional safety, not only for ourselves, but for her, and then leadership and intimacy. And a big piece of masculine frame, like you were saying, Cynthia, is you have your own set of values as a man. And that's not going to be swayed by anyone, regardless of what's happening in the world. You're not going to collapse in on your own values, who you believe you are, your value on the inside. And as you lead in intimacy, you may be asking her to do things that she's uncertain about or feel a little anxious. So let me ask you, Cynthia. So on one end of the spectrum, we have a man who's providing, but let's say very boring. Yeah. We've heard stories, or maybe you've been in a story where she says, I'm bored. Okay. And then on the other end are what? Bad boy guys who aren't interested in a relationship that do whatever. They're like motorcycle or rock climb. The cliche is rock climbing. They want to go rock climbing every day and they don't care about relationship. They want to go have excitement and edge in the world. What is that spectrum like, that dichotomy like for a woman, as far as what's it feel like to be bored because everything is just super comfortable. She has no challenge. Like I have clients who make 7 figures a year and they don't have strong leadership for their relationship or sexuality. So she just seems to be like awash. She just seems to be drifting because she has no need to make money. He's not leading the relationship to someplace deep like soul connection. And he doesn't have a lot of sexual leadership in the bedroom. So she's just kind of waiting for life to happen, and that she's not happy in that spot. Or the rock climber guy who doesn't care about her at all. Talk with us about that for a minute and then we'll bounce to the chat.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's making me feel how when you're being this incredible provider for her, let's say she doesn't even have to work if she doesn't want to, and then she's unhappy and bored. Part of me has an immediate response to that, and that's more negative and maybe even judgmental of the feminine that can be so self-serving, so self-absorbed and wanting to ride like the pleasure circuit. But I think deeper than that is, the feminine craves edge, especially emotional edge, rise and fall, not because there's anything wrong with her about that, but if we look at a spiritual sacred purpose for femininity being on here on earth, it's to ride and be along on those emotional edges and how they grow sacred relationship. So that's the depth of what she's craving and the hunger she's craving when she, without her knowing, and digests maybe a certain story in our culture that the rock climber somehow is going to provide that because they themselves are an edge. And so she feels the danger, or she feels that he's not going to provide perfect comfort and go do whatever the hell he wants. She gets to have some of that rise and fall. And initially that's incredible. It can be really exciting. The rock bottom experience of that for the feminine is a man, I would say, who's still in night mode, or out being in edge versus king mode, is always going to pursue the next edge, and eventually she will become boring to him, or her emotionality will become boring to him or inconvenient, and so she's not going to get that deep, what she's looking for deeply.
Yeah, thank you. Let's go into some specifics. So yeah, thanks for raising your hand, please. Hey, good to see you.
So hey, nice to see you. So this is very, very much kind of where I didn't hear the words "I'm bored," but I heard there's no passion. And I was trying to decipher that. I'm I'm one of those guys. I gave my wife everything. We don't have issues financially. There's nothing there. She doesn't have to work. You don't have to worry about what you buy. It just doesn't matter. And because I just kept going to work and doing my business, and then a lot of the stuff that I think used to attract her to me, had to fall by the wayside when we had kids, and she got bored, and now we're getting divorced.
Okay, it's just A and then B. Okay, so what else? I mean, within that, we could go a lot of different directions, right? So since we have Cynthia here on this particular call, do you have a question then for Cynthia in particular?
I mean, what is the reaction that is expected when a woman says "I'm bored" or "you don't have any passion anymore"? Like, I mean, I'm not sure what I go to work every day. I do the things I'm supposed to do. I guess I'm not sure what the expectation of me was when she said that.
Sure, that's a great question. Yeah, please.
Gosh, I suddenly just wanted to burst into tears. I can't imagine what that feels like. And I would say that there's like 3 levels of that. One, there's no passion, I'm bored is kind of a level 1 of her just being super comfortable and being almost entitled in that sense of comfort. So there's no option for her to kind of entice out or seduce, edge in you, because she just has everything and it feels like that she's supposed to have everything. And then we could go into like a second level that maybe she feels she really wants to have a conversation with you about passion and hear you verbally share what your drive is, your edge is, and how there's the enticement of bringing her along for the adventure that you have for yourself. And then the third level, I think, is her getting to feel that, how that edge in you is a fire that's kindled, and it's something that you get to own, and that she's not entitled to always be in that fire with you. And so there's a little bit of like drama with that. Like he burns hot with this, and when I'm invited into it, I can be. But there's also something that he holds really close to himself as a man that I get to have the gift of experiencing with him when he deems it's a good time for that.
Yeah, and the other thing that she's said to me multiple times is like, you didn't make me feel like an equal partner. And I guess there's a lot of that that's probably true. Like, as far as I'm making decisions, financial decisions on stuff, it's like, she was just along for the ride. And I just did what I wanted when I wanted. And she didn't care for that.
Let me ask Cynthia. So you just owned, maybe I just made decisions that I didn't consult her. Okay. And I'm curious for Cynthia on the other side of the coins. Why might a woman look back and rewrite history and add that onto the pile of grievances that she's now saying after she's already separating? So she didn't say this in the past. She's saying it now on top of the list of grievances, looking back. Why might that be? Why might a woman say this?
I think that if we go into, she may not deeply know what her truest grievance is. She may not deeply know herself well enough and why she wants something different in the moment, but can't even really give a good logical step-by-step of how I want it to be different. And so I think when we don't know, especially as women, there's this ball of emotional, some of it's angry, some of it's hurt, some of it's judgmental, and it's in here. We're trying to like grab from anything to give proof to why we feel so awful. And unfortunately, in these situations, especially if you've provided the perfect comfort for her, she never is going to lose it. It's always going to be there. It becomes an easy game of blame and piling on, because then that gives her relief of the angst, as if to make it all your fault, you then have to carry this bag of guilt and shame, making her feel like she's free of it.
So you had asked, what was she expecting as a response to "I'm bored"? And Cynthia gave you three potential, like number one is be a dancing monkey for me, I'm bored, right? Number two is let's have a conversation. And number three is that she wants to ride more edge, emotional edge or soul-based edge with you. And she's just maybe fumbling with her word. She's inarticulately saying, I'm bored. Which of those maybe rings true in your past, in your relationship, would you say?
Well, I think a little bit of each one of those things. She wanted me to bring along for the ride, but she couldn't communicate that to me. I think she wanted to have a conversation, but again, she was unable to ever communicate with me. And that, I think, is one of the biggest things. Like, she told me something, just last week, like that pissed her off in 2016. I'm like, well, did you tell me about it? Well, no, my friend told me I should tell you about it. I'm like, well, did you? And she's like, no, I couldn't. I'm like, well, what was that? And she's like, well, you got a haircut on Mother's Day. I'm like, wow, okay. And it's, so stuff like that just keeps coming up. So, I mean, I guess if I would have done all this stuff or kind of like done this work a year ago, maybe I would have been able to stem stop the leaks.
Yeah, let me jump in with a skill that you and every man can use. So if you've read the book, Never Split the Difference, any of us, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, it's an excellent book. And in there, he emphasizes using what and how questions, not so much why questions. So if you're a woman, if your wife says, well, 7 years ago, you got a haircut on Mother's Day, I would ask a what or a how question. Like, what would you like me to do about this now? Or what would you have liked to have happened in the past? So first, what would you have liked to have happened in the past? So that hopefully gets her to express her pain. And then, what would you like me to do about this now? Or how can I make this right in this moment now? Or how would you like to move forward with me with what you just said? So we need to have something to do instead of just defending ourselves, right? Well, what do you mean a haircut? You didn't tell me, right? Which is our natural reaction. Asking a question that starts with what or how is a great way to go from there. Yeah. Appreciate you coming in.
Looking back, my experience was, it was like this epiphany once I got into this work about, a lot of the mistakes I'd made, and what I found to be really devastating to my relationship with my wife was, and even myself, was just being very passive. And it's like the monotony of life, right? And you kind of mentioned it. It's like go to work, come home, cook dinner, do dishes, weekend, and then, rinse and repeat. And in all of that struggle and all the hats that we have to wear as humans, but particularly as men, we really get lost in what we're talking about today, right? Which is, what is the edge? And the kingly vision rings in my head because of all the bullshit that I carried through my life and into my marriage, not knowing that it was having a really negative effect, understanding that I had issues, but not sure how to work through them. And so, finding this perfect balance, if you will, between the alpha, the beta, right? Like, I don't think it can ever be harmonized. It's never truly going to be achieved. You could probably get pretty close, And so, that's just kind of a backdrop to what I've heard you guys say today, as it relates to me and my life. But that was my biggest problem, is just being super passive and not really having an edge. I'm still struggling. I guess my question is, I'm still struggling to find my edge. You've asked me this on other calls, Jeff, like, hey, what's your edge? And I'm not even sure I know how to define that, let alone answer it. So, part of the work that I'm doing in my head and internally is trying to figure out what that is, what it looks like, how I can live through it or by it, and how it impacts my relationship, not just with myself, but with my wife and even my kids. But I think, to point, man, that, I'm not going through a divorce. So, man, I'm sorry to hear that you are, but I know I was getting really close. And unlike you, I think I found this work in the nick of time. Otherwise, I would be divorced at this point because of all that passive behavior and just not really having a vision. Providing, being very beta, quite frankly, but the bad beta, too much of that comfort and, let's just get along and, all that bullshit. And now I'm kind of coming into and have found a part of myself that's always been there, and finding things that bring me passion and focusing on that. And then not waiting for her to come along for the ride, but being interested in whether she wants to. And I think I'm at a point now where it would matter to me if her answer was no, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't think that's true about her. I think she does. But it's gotten me very curious about what happens to both me and my relationship when I truly focus on me in good ways and healthy ways, and what kind of an impact, positive impact, that has on my relationships.
That's really well said. So let me give you a quick answer to where you might discover some edge, not just for you, but every man watching this. So I talk about when you turn your shoulders toward your own life, regardless of relationship, that's one thing. Or when you turn your shoulders towards your relationship, that's another thing. And if I talk about just yourself, I think that's what you were referring to, is just yourself in your life. There's really 3 phases that we go through. The first is wanting external success. We want to make money to pay the bills. We want to get a house, a car, external stuff. Like we want to have sex, which in this terms is more external just for us. Okay. So first is external success. Then it's learning about our own selves on the inside. How did I grow up? How am I in my own way? What do I believe about spirituality? What's the meaning of life? Internal journey. And then the third is helping the world, serving the world. How can I bloom love in the world or help a particular organization? And then we usually cycle through those. So external success, internal knowledge and awareness, and then serving the world in a more holistic or soul-based way. So based off of that, if we had more time, I would ask you, where is maybe an edge in one of those three? So if any man watching this, now, if I have no edge in my own life, if I just don't care and I come home and it's whatever, it's the weekend, I drink a beer. And in my relationship, it's the same thing. It's kind of like, well, whatever, I'm just going to let her initiate sex because she has in the past. And I don't, we've got Christmas coming up. That'll be good enough for, a celebration this year. And otherwise, I just don't really care. There's a boring in you and there's a boring in the relationship space. And those are two kind of different things. Let me draw you something really fast. I'll ask Cynthia a question here too. There's a man on here that I spoke with yesterday. I drew something really similar to this yesterday. So let's say
Was it me?
Yeah, it was. Let's say there's two. Was it me? There's two axes. Okay.
I know the graph.
Yeah, we've got comfort down here, comfort here, and attraction here. Okay. Now, I talked about how anxiety relates to attraction, and I won't go more into that specifically. But part of anxiety is she doesn't know when you turn your shoulders away from her, you feel disconnected from her. You're out rock climbing or saving, curing cancer or whatever it is you're doing. Okay. So she has a anxiety about what's going on with you. You're not around. She doesn't really know. And when you're around all the time, it's more comfort. So if all you're doing is, if there's no sex and all comfort, it looks like this, right? If it's a one night stand, okay, one night stand looks like this, right? Well, what we want in relationship is to build it like this, right? This is what we want in relationship. And so being able to describe this to your woman in one sentence, I want to forever be growing in connection and depth and intimacy with you, you might say. So knowing where you are, usually guys, when they come to this work, are here, but they're still giving a 10 out of 10 level of comfort to a woman who has zero attraction for them. And why is that not? What happens for a woman when I'm giving 10 out of 10 comfort and I'm okay if I'm getting 0 out of a 10 attraction in the relationship? Why is that off? What happens for a woman in that spot?
Yeah, it feeds and almost gives her a false confidence in the relationship, as in my physical safety, physiologically, all those basic human needs are going to be met, and I just get to have that. So there's, let's say, kind of a shadow emotion that comes with comfort, that extreme comfort, and that's entitlement, and again that self-absorption, and that can really put a woman, it's actually into even a more like I'm completely safe in survival mode, as in she doesn't then want to feel your edge in certain moments. She doesn't want to feel a rise and fall. She just wants more and more comfort, more and more safety, and not feel things that maybe are a little uncomfortable. And then when she wants a little bit more of a dopamine hit, she's going to find that in other ways, whether it's shopping or another person or another energy, because that has no real risk to it. So then that whole oxytocin versus dopamine gets really, even just really messed up in her own body. And then you see her kind of act accordingly or feel accordingly.
Yeah, and there's a momentum to this. There's a double down that happens, because if you've been a certain way for years and then you go to shift it and you're withdrawing comfort, so to speak, or has more anxiety, she won't like it. So she'll double down on telling you you're doing a bad thing, or you're being an asshole, or you're being selfish, or you're a narcissist, or now you're ignoring her. But you have to ground yourself in your own sense of awareness within your journaling, within your values, and with other men, so you can get non-biased feedback that's not, no offense to your woman, but she's incredibly biased, and that's okay. You don't learn how to be a man from your woman. You learn how to be a man with other men, and through this work and philosophical exploration. So we only have so much time. Come on in, please. And you guys in the chat, I appreciate you. Glimmer when she watches me play hockey, or I have power accomplishment professionally. Yeah, we'll have to take a look at the chat here too. Yeah, please.
Hey guys, how's it going? Great talk. Yeah, a little bit kind of the opposite of what I was saying. Something that came up in my situation was that she would say you're too much. It was like, not that you're not the boring comment, but like that you want to do too many things. There's too much going on. I was the one that kind of the idea guy, the one that wanted to plan plan excursions and do things with the family and with her, and she was like, it's too much, you're too much. And it really hurt, and I was just like, that was one of the many things she brought up, when we were splitting. And how do I interpret that,
Well, let's do this real fast because we're out of time, but assuming that it's not just, yo, dude, I don't want to do as much on my calendar as you, assuming that this is if I take this to another place where if she can shame you into changing who you are, then you lose. So a shit test is a woman challenging you. A shit test is a woman challenging you, hoping that you pass, meaning that you don't kowtow to her. So if she says, your dick is just too big, can you like fuck me more shallow, please? And you say, I'm sorry, mommy. Oh, am I hurting you? Versus you handle it in a cool, collected way. Like, well, maybe we'll just go slower. And I know a tantric practice that we can utilize. And, you just handle it in a cool, calm way. Like, you go rock climbing too much. Well, I'm sorry, mommy. I won't go rock climbing as much. Versus, well, how can we make this work? Because I love rock climbing and it's an important part of who I am.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
That's how I'd answer that. Yeah. Thank you. That's a great question. I just have to pause for time. Cynthia, what else would you add on to what I was saying there? How does that ring true for the depth of the feminine? Aside from the cock being too big thing, we'll just say that for another time.
Yeah, as you were speaking of your situation, I was like, oh, that feels so soul crushing and feels like the opposite of here I'm providing my edge so easily and she's not wanting to join. It almost reminds me of, again, there's 3 levels of edge. And let's say that kind of verbal back and forth of, well, you're too much, I don't want to go do that, is that kind of level 2 edge. Whereas when you are really diving into the level 3 of not in any way diminishing who you are, what you offer, and what you believe, with that kind of, come on, bring it here, baby, let's find a way that this works. To me, that reminds me of that deeper level 3, because she can even feel in that moment a rise and fall of emotional, what are you going to say next? And that feels super compelling and very, very attractive. Even though I can feel my own self, I'm not one who's wanting to go on activities every weekend. I'm super compelled and attracted to that edge in you that would play with that some and not hide it in one moment from that relationship space.
Yeah, thank you. It's well said. You never want to lose your own self. So to bring it full circle, the 2 factors to consider are attraction and comfort. And most men in this work are offering too much comfort, thinking, because you like comfort, you want comfort from her. So you're thinking, let me give her more comfort because that's what I want. And that's not actually going to help you. It's going to push her farther away because it's been too unbalanced in that direction as it's been, whether it's good beta or even worse, the not good beta, nice guy, neediness and such. So certainly if you have questions about this, reach out to us. I didn't get a chance to go more into our levels, which I've shown before and Cynthia was inferring and talking about today. And also in our membership groups and in our one-on-one, we talk much more deeply about what is level 3 relationship and how do we cultivate that. I didn't have time for this particular slide today, so we can get into that. If you want to reach out to us, greatmenmovemountains.com, got more stuff there. I appreciate all you guys in the chat. I do get a copy of the chat, so I'll look there. And if you want to talk more about these things, post in the forum, right? greatmenmovemountains.com/Facebook. And I'll use your questions maybe for a future call. Okay, reach out to us directly if you guys want to. All right, Cynthia, thanks. See you guys next week, same time. Ciao, guys.